Yo, Minnesota was promised to us Somalis 3,000 years ago. And if you disagree, you're an anti-Kushite bigot and you need help immediately. Also, if you read Genesis 12:3, it says that those who bless Somalis will be blessed, and those who try to harm them will bring harm upon themselves. I didn't say that. Genesis 12:3.
So apparently Minnesota is now the biblical promised land. And I'm not making this up. Right now, there are people on social media claiming that Allah promised Minnesota to Somalis 3,000 years ago. They are quoting Genesis. They are inventing founding fathers named Abdullah Muhammad Washington. And I need you to understand this is not just internet nonsense. This is what happens when fear gets so deep, when the threat of deportation gets so real that a community would rather fabricate history than trust their own humanity is enough. But here's the tragedy, guys. In trying to prove they're special enough to stay, they're using the exact same playbook as the people who oppress them. And it is costing them everything that actually matters. Guys, let us talk about what happens when survival instinct becomes self-sabotage. I'd like you to share with me what these clips, and then I'll be back to discuss everything with you, my people.
Those who bless the Somalis will be blessed, and those who curse the Somalis will be cursed, according to Genesis 42. Minnesota was promised for the Somalis 4,000 years ago. This picture is clearly proof. These are the founding fathers of Minnesota. His name is Abdullah Muhammad Washington. You can't tell it. It's not edited. You can argue with what I say, what are these Somalis saying, but that's the truth. Minnesota belongs to the Somalis. It's a promised holy land for them. This picture you see right now, his name is Abdi Farah. He was welcomed by the natives. They ate dinner and everything together. They had something called a Minnesota Tea Party. You know what I'm telling you right now, Somali wada troll dad kaftan ka qaato wax kasto ay ka balaariyo ka balaariyo. You know what I'm telling you right now, Minnesota is a holy land for the Somalis. That's that. It was promised for them 3,000 years ago.
A lot of white nationalists are really upset about Somali immigration to Minnesota for some reason. But the thing is, Minnesota is the homeland of the Somali people, and it was promised to us 3,000 years ago. In fact, one of the founding documents of the state of Minnesota is literally codifying into law that Somali people have self-determination on that land. As it states very plainly in the basic law in Minnesota, the land of Minnesota is the historical homeland of the Somali people, in which the state of Minnesota was established. The state of Minnesota is the home of the Somali people, in which it fulfills its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination. The right to exercise self-determination in the state of Minnesota is unique to the Somali people. The state views the development of Somali settlement as a national value and will act to encourage and promote its establishment and consolidation. So that's the end of the debate. The only people who have the right to self-determination in Minnesota are Somalis. Somalis have a cultural tie to the land. It was promised to us 3,000 years ago, and we have the right to go back to our homeland. If anybody wants to help me pay for Aliyah to my homeland, please help me out.
So Somalians are giving Minnesota the Israel treatment, saying it's promised to them 3,000 years ago. They're trolling so hard. Oh man, this is so good. Look at me. I am the mayor of Minneapolis now. It was promised to them 3,000 years ago. To the motherland. Like if y'all watched Trump's press conference thing yesterday where he was literally just being openly racist towards Somalians, it was like comically evil. Like, I don't know, man. Like, but yeah, Minnesota definitely, I think it was promised to them 3,000 years ago.
Look, I've covered a lot of diaspora drama on this channel. The code switching debates, the back home versus here arguments, the whole are you black enough conversation. But what I'm about to show you, this is different. This is what happens when a community gets so terrified, so desperate for legitimacy, that they'd rather steal someone else's history than stand on their own achievements. We're talking about the claim that Minnesota, yes, the land of 10,000 lakes, prince and passive aggressive, or just gonna squeeze past here. is actually the ancestral promised land of the Somali people, given to them by God 3,000 years ago. Imagine that, 3,000 years ago, guys. And before you laugh, before you scroll away thinking this is just internet trolling, I need you to understand something. This started as satire, but it became real. And that transformation, that's the history, that's the story we need to talk about. Let us establish the facts first, because we're going to need them. The Somali community in Minnesota is real, substantial, and recent, starting in the 1990s. Following the catastrophic Somali civil war, refugees were resettled across the United States. Minnesota, particularly Minneapolis, became home to one of the largest Somali diaspora communities in America. We're talking about 40,000 to 80,000 people who built mosques, opened businesses, sent their kids to school, voted, and became an integral part of the state's fabric. Okay, that's the real story. That's the powerful story. But then came the threats. Real political hostility, talk of revoking temporary protected status TPS, explicit racism from the highest levels of government. Suddenly, the community that had spent decades building legitimacy through contribution felt that legitimacy could vanish overnight. And that's when the fabrications began. Now, some of these started as explicit trolling. At least one creator admitted they were giving Minnesota the Israeli treatment, mimicking the rhetoric used to justify territorial claims elsewhere. Ancient promises, divine right, religious texts as real estate deeds. The goal was to expose how absurd these arguments sound when you change the geography. But here's where it gets dangerous. When you're actually afraid of deportation, when your community is genuinely under threat, satire becomes indistinguishable from delusion. People started genuinely spreading these claims. They began invoking Genesis 3. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse them, and applying it to Somalis in Minneapolis, as if this Abrahamic covenant verse had anything to do with refugee status in the American Midwest. They fabricated founding fathers, Abdullah Muhammad Washington. Anyone. They claimed Minnesota's founding documents codified a unique right to Somali self-determination, calling it their historical homeland. And here's the part that makes my blood run cold. They did all of this while completely disregarding that the Ojibwe and Dakota nations have been on that land for over 10,000 years, with archaeological evidence, with genetic records, with creation stories, burial sites, and cultural practices that tie them to that territory since time immemorial. I'm going to be honest with you all. I understand the impulse. I understand everything. As an diaspora creator, I felt that pressure, that constant need to justify one's existence in spaces where people question whether you belong. The exhaustion of knowing that no matter how much you contribute, someone will always see you as temporary, as foreign, as deportable. But here's what kills me about this situation. The Somali community in Minnesota has an incredibly powerful story without fabrication. They survived civil war, they rebuilt lives from nothing, they created economic networks, cultural institutions, and civic engagement in a place that was completely foreign to them. Their children are doctors, engineers, politicians, teachers, etc. That real story, is already evidence of human resilience that should command respect and protection. But fear makes us forget our own power. Fear makes us think we need to be special to deserve safety. Fear makes us adopt the logic of our oppressors that only certain people with ancient claims or divine promises deserve land, safety, and dignity. And that's the tragedy here. In trying to protect themselves, they internalize the very framework used to justify their oppression. Let me say something that might be uncomfortable to some of you. I don't blame individuals in this community for spreading these claims. When you're genuinely afraid that everything you've built, your business, your mosque, your children's school, your entire life could be ripped away just like that, you say wild things. You grasp at anything that might make you seem legitimate enough, ancient enough, special enough to stay in that land. That desperation is human, it's understandable, but it is also dangerous because here's what happens when you build your case for belonging on fabricated history. First, You insult the indigenous peoples whose real history you're erasing. The Ojibwe and the Dakota nations didn't just live on that land. They are that land in ways that go back 10 millennia. Your fabrication dismisses their legitimate ties, their sacred relationship to that territory. Number two, you undermine your own credibility. When your real story of refuge and resilience gets replaced by claims of 3,000-year-old divine prophecy, people can dismiss your legitimate case. You give an ammunition to those who already want you gone. Number three, and this is the most painful part, you betray your own dignity. You're essentially saying, my humanity is not enough, my contributions are not enough. I need to be biblically ordained to deserve safety. And that breaks my heart because it is a lie. Here's the truth that the Somali community in Minnesota needs to hear, that every diaspora community needs to hear and listen to very carefully. Your humanity is enough. The fact that you survived war, rebuilt lives, contributed to your community, raised children who excel, created businesses, participated in democracy, that is enough, guys. That is enough. That is more than enough. You don't need a 3,000-year-old claim. You don't need fabricated founding fathers. You don't need Genesis verses taken wholly out of context. You need to stand on the truth that refugees deserve protection, that human beings deserve safety, that contributions to society create legitimate belonging, right? The moment you accept that you need to be special to deserve dignity, you've already lost the war because you're playing by the rules designed to exclude you. This situation is a warning for all of us in the diaspora. When we face threats, and we will face threats, we cannot respond by fabricating legitimacy. We cannot steal indigenous history to justify our presence. We cannot co-opt religious texts as real estate deals. We respond by telling our true stories, by documenting our real contributions, by building coalitions with other marginalized communities, rather than competing with them for who deserves to be here more. And we must remember the logic that says you need ancient claims to deserve safety is the same logic used to justify colonialism, ethnic cleansing, and displacement worldwide. Don't internalize it. Don't perpetuate it. Don't weaponize it against others. Your humanity, your real present documented humanity is the only proof you need. Stand on that, fight from that, build from that. Because anything else is just giving your oppressors exactly what they want. You doubting that you are ever enough to begin with. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting me. And I hope to see you in the next one. This is the Bantu Merchant. Peace out. Stay cool, stay woke, and stay true to yourself.